What is consciousness? The live stream of consciousness is on a quest to unravel the mysteries of existence. Every episode, we ask the fundamental question that has captivated human minds for centuries. Is consciousness merely a product of our brains, or does it connect us to something greater? Explore the very fabric of our thoughts. Don't miss a moment. Expand your awareness and tap into the boundless potential that resides within you. Welcome to the live stream of consciousness.
Hello, and welcome to the live stream of consciousness. I love Jesse's intro. Have you guys expanded into the natural potential that is you yet? I'm trying each week to do that here, and I appreciate you guys always joining. Glad you're here. My name is Michael Zinn. This is the live stream of consciousness. It is a once a week program where I interview pretty amazing people who do pretty amazing things. Whatever that might be. I've had my dentist on the show. I think that's pretty amazing, and we had a pretty amazing conversation. But mostly it's metaphysical people and interests and conversations, and I'm so glad that you guys allow me to do that here and join me each week. I see Tim is out there. What's up, Tim? Always eager to give me the hola from Brazil. I appreciate that. I'm really excited. Tonight, I have a guest on my show who is one of those guests somebody who I haven't really met personally. I don't really know much about, so I get to learn about them as you're getting to learn about them. I do know a little bit. We had a cool discussion previous to this whole thing, which I'm hoping we can get into a little bit about AI and the future of humanity and all of that. But tonight's guest is Jost van Dyke. He is an intuitive astrologer. And I just noticed a couple of minutes ago on his website, this quote about your astrology becomes your biography. So he's an intuitive astrologer. I love astrology. And I just realized reading that quote and thinking about quantum physics, about how we are entangled with the cosmos, right? Our atoms, and so how astrology is actually a science and art in a way to be able to read that and actually connect those points in the universe and time and space. And I'm getting way ahead of myself now, but let me introduce to the live stream of consciousness this week's guest, intuitive astrologer Jost van Dyke. Welcome to the show, Jost. How you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Oh, excellent. I'm really glad you made it. You're one of these people who have been kind of coming into my vortex through the community of, spiritual people. Grace Grella, who was on the show, also is an amazing human being and has so many great things to talk about and a great experience. And I think that's really my purpose here. I think everybody who watches the show would agree that the purpose is to connect to these people one at a time and really get to know them, and that everyone is connected, as it says in the intro. Are we connected to something larger? And I think that's what this show is exploring, and I'm super excited to explore it with you tonight. So we always begin with a particular question, and I know I prepared you ahead of time, so I'm excited to hear what you have to say about this. But a couple of quick questions, kind of get business out of the way, and then we can talk all about you and what you do, and get into that. But we're here on the live stream of consciousness. What does that mean? What is consciousness?
Well, to echo your intro, I mean, this is a question that has intrigued thinkers for millennia. Essentially, consciousness is an awareness of your thoughts, your feelings, sensations. This is, of course, more self-reflective consciousness, but then you have external consciousness, which is a perception. But then within the idea of consciousness, there are gradients. I mean, it's determined. I mean, we all have consciousness, but there are others that may be more evolved because of um, experiences that they've had or certain practices that they've been involved with that elevates or transcends their consciousness. But I think it's consciousness is what, isn't it sort of the glue that holds everything together? I mean, the love and light people they're going to say love is what holds, you know, the multiverse together, but really it's consciousness. And so everything has consciousness, and then beyond that, like I said before, I mean, there are levels of consciousness, especially when you go into multidimensional consciousness and different, you know, upper tiers and upper levels of consciousness that we all hopefully are striving for. So does that answer your question?
It does, and it raises a lot of other questions, which
Okay.
usually that question does. That, like you said, it's been the topic of thought by many great thinkers for a long time. The kind of why are we here question, you know what I mean? And I always love telling people when they say, well, why are we here? And I say, you're here because I'm here because me. You know, like we're here to experience whatever it is we're experiencing as ourselves. But I think again, kind of what I was saying about this show, I feel like as a race of beings, human beings, I think part of the plan is to share those experiences with each other and connect them into one big definition, one big kind of happy existence. So I guess that's the best way to say it. I've got a couple of people saying hello. I just want to acknowledge Grace Grella out there saying hello, superstars.
Hi, Grace.
We've got Ninja Kitty out there saying welcome, Jost.
Oh, thank you.
And Tim saying welcome to the show in Portuguese, I think is the language of Brazil. And then we've got the quiet healer Janice saying hello as well. So
hi, Janice.
good to see the loving family out there. I can feel you guys. Makes me really feel good. So yeah, so you do bring up a lot of questions, but before I get into some of the questions about what you thought consciousness was, there's another part of what I like to find out about my guests, and usually this is fun, but it's really asking you to share either a memory or an experience of when you realized there was more to existence than just the 3D that's kind of in front of us.
Well, when does memory really begin? Does it begin prenatal? Does it begin in the womb? The reason why I bring that up is because a couple of years before I was born, my parents had a close encounter of the second kind. So I grew up with, I know now, you know, ETs and extraterrestrial, it's all like au courant. But I mean, I've been living with this since the 50s.
Right.
And then at the age of, I guess the age of 4, I had an angelic visitation. So even at that young age, it made such a imprint on my developing psyche that I knew that there was so much more than what's happening in the 3D plane.
Right.
So was I fortunate? I don't know. I mean, it's just that from a very early age, I knew that this was not, there's so much more to life. And to, again, coining the phrase consciousness, there's so much more than just what we're seeing day to day in the mundane world.
Right. And I think fortunately, there are excuse me, there are people and shows like this that kind of allow you to get out of that, because I feel like growing up, there does seem to be this world that is trying to funnel most people into not knowing those things and not believing those things, because I do believe that's where we get our power from, right? That makes us more powerful beings when we're connected to that. So not to get into any of that kind of stuff. That's a whole other show, conspiracy theories and this and that. But I love what you said about where does memory start, and the idea that, a couple of years before you were born, your parents had this experience that you feel, and I feel, not even really knowing you too well, but just knowing who you are and your essence, that has affected your being and the shape of who you are. um and back in the 50s, yeah, it was kind of probably crazy to talk about aliens and close encounters of the second kind, right, which is actual physical contact, right? That's what the second kind is. That's really incredible story. So can you tell us a little bit about how that affected your parents, and when they connected that to you being born, like the whole, what's the whole connection to that?
Um, well, where this happened, I mean, not only did it happen in the 50s, but it also happened in um, Bible Belt, USA, in rural North Florida, where any this would have been completely alien to the vernacular, or what or what people were thinking about in
Right.
that time. I don't think my parents when it happened and what it was. It's interesting because they described it to me, and then when we saw the film Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and there's that famous scene where Richard Dreyfuss is in his truck. He stopped to read the map because he's lost, and then
Mhm.
the light, the craft is hovering over his truck, and
Right.
this bright light shines and everything kind of goes haywire.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
kind of what my parents experienced. It was this bright light, and you can imagine this was back in, I guess, 1954. So they didn't really know what was going on until later, um, more when I was probably 5 or 6, when news of Roswell and other such events was becoming more mainstream, and so they were able to sort of identify with that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then um, it became part of my childhood, and we just talked about it. And then my dad was a pilot, not a commercial pilot, but a pilot. And we would, on evenings that we'd be out flying. I mean, we would have encounters, and we would see craft. And there were a couple of other incidences where we were out, driving, and we had an encounter. So it's always been part of my past.
Wow.
It's just been who I am.
So this is weird. This is kind of weird to say to an intuitive, because I know how it works. But I'm feeling I'm feeling like there was a very playful nature to this relationship.
You
Is that
mean
true?
with me and the
Yeah, just you and your family, and
oh yeah, I mean my dad used to
the
tease me that
extraterrestrials.
I was spawned by extraterrestrials.
Yeah, I feel like it was like
Oh yeah,
like it wasn't like a fearful relationship. I guess that's
no,
what I'm trying to say. Like you guys were like totally comfortable
yeah,
with this relationship, and it was a friendly relationship, and like I said, a playful relationship. Wow,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
cool. I just kind of felt that. That was just like came to me, and I kind of
You
experienced
got
it.
the gift.
Yeah, that was awesome. Um, Very, very cool. And so I guess take me a little further along the way. When did you start realizing this was something that you wanted to share with others, and make a part of who you are, as far as your life and what you do? And we'll talk about what you do, or you could tell us what you do and how that's related.
I'm not really sure what you're asking. You mean
Well, so you had this relationship, and this knowledge. You were very comfortable with the idea of extraterrestrials as existing as part of being, right, and part of what reality was, more so than most people, right? I mean, the mainstream isn't really. There's certainly a good contingency of people who believe in extraterrestrial life and that kind of thing, but I mean, again, your experience, you have this firsthand relationship. I feel like it's a different thing. I feel like there's something different about your relationship. So I guess my question is, where the connection is to, okay, there's aliens, and then a more like intuitive approach to it, psychic, or what we haven't talked about you and what you do specifically, so I'm not really sure. That's kind of what I want to know, is like, how does that relate to what you do specifically now?
Well, that's something that I continue to learn. Um, so it's sort of like getting to know you. It's an ongoing thing as far as extraterrestrial intelligence,
Mhm.
because there was a period of time when I was living in New York, between 1984 and 1988. I was actually having what I call interdimensional visitations. And so there were two, and the thing about it is that my encounters with extraterrestrial intelligence or extraterrestrial beings, entities, they weren't anthropomorphic at all. They
Mhm.
were sort of, if I describe them, there was light entities. It was sort of like a silhouette of light
Mhm.
and frequency and radiation that I palpably felt.
Mhm.
But anyway, in this period of 4 years, I was having these visitations, and they took me on. I know this sounds like science fiction. They're probably, your audience is probably asking, why do you have this wacko on your
No,
show?
this is what my audience love. This is,
Oh, okay.
yeah, this is
So,
exactly, that's why I
but
had
in
you on the
these,
show.
okay, in these encounters, I had a lot of sort of, the only way I can describe it is sort of astral projection type of
Mhm.
experiences. So I was definitely, leaving my body,
Mhm.
um, and and then going out into the outer reaches of the galaxy.
Mhm.
Um, and for example, on one of the sort of explorations into the outer reaches, they showed me dark matter. Now, this was decades before dark matter was Scientific American.
Right.
So I didn't have a frame of reference, but I do remember them saying dark energy, dark matter,
Right.
that it
Right. That
is,
word hadn't even been in the mainstream
yeah.
yet. Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember when I was trying to tell friends, I mean, you know, they just,
Wow.
there was no frame of reference.
Right. Right.
And it
Right.
wasn't until, I mean, that was in 83, 84. So it wasn't until with the last 20 years that dark energy and dark matter became much more mainstream.
Right. Right. Right.
Um, so, so to answer your question a roundabout way, I mean, there's always been this sort of communication, but and it goes back to consciousness and levels of awareness
Mhm.
and timing.
Right.
There are certain things, as you're raising your consciousness, that you may not be ready for, because the energy is so powerful
Mhm.
that if you were to quote unquote download that energy and that frequency, it would destroy you.
Right.
So
Be in a
they
mental
sort of,
hospital. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You'd be in a mental hospital, right? Like, you just too much.
Exactly.
You. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's why when um, these homeless people that are just speaking out, I mean, you don't know who they're communicating with. I mean, we
Mhm.
think they're crazy, but they very well could be getting transmissions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but anyway, this has been sort of part of my spiritual evolution. Is they sort of just kind of what they do with humanity as a whole.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
kind of drop these seeds,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that sort of helps us grow to the next stage.
Right.
And that's happened to me individually. So there are certain moments and certain periods in my life where they don't always communicate, but when they do, it's sort of a uh, it's a springboard,
Mhm.
and it lifts me off, to another rung on my spiritual evolutionary ladder, as it were.
Right, right, right. And is this an ongoing relationship? Do you
It
still?
is. Oh
Wow,
yeah, it
awesome.
is. Now I haven't had a recent encounter. The latest encounter would have been about 10 or 15 years ago.
Okay.
Um, it got to the point where it was just too much. So I really just, and of course, there's always free will, and they're only going to do as much as that I'm willing to
You respond to, yeah,
accept.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so at some point, because I felt like it was starting to affect me physically,
Mhm, mhm,
I said, you're going to have to back off and let this sort of reverberate and resonate through my system,
mhm.
and then I can take the next dose, as it were. But I feel like they're always there, they're always hovering. I feel like if I were to, sort of reach out and ask them to, you know, start visitations again, they perhaps would. But that, of course, that's all kind of out of my control. I mean,
Is it?
so I mean, not that I feel helpless or out of control,
Right,
but they're coming from a higher intelligence, so they know
sure,
when I've sort of reached this next stage, I've
sure.
got to do some homework too
Right,
to
right, right.
reach. Yeah,
But you're connected, which is the Grace is saying Jost van Dyke has always been out of this world, and bringing up frequency, energy, and vibration. Nicholas Tesla is everything, and that's again that's what I agree. And I got to tell you, my brain, I, I I love this show because I get to talk to people, and then it just makes me think, and I like I'm going a million miles an hour. And one of the things that I've touched on, but not as much as I think I want to with you because I feel like you might have some insight into this is the idea of aliens, um again, not being like, we have all of these ideas and these representations in our heads and in media about these physical beings, and my thoughts are aliens are interdimensional, and
yes,
and as well as spirit, right?
yes.
And when it comes to psychic medium, so there's this big connection that I haven't really talked about, I guess it's other realms, right? Because it's in those realms we have both of these things that exist, and what's the similarity between those things and what's the connection between those things? That's kind of where my head is buzzing right now. I feel like you might have some sort of insight into that. Can you tell me what you think of that question? Like, is there a connection between our past loved ones and alien entities?
Give me a moment.
Okay.
Well, okay. So I'm gonna answer your question with a question.
Okay.
So who's to say? And I try to stay away from referring to them as aliens,
Sure.
um, because they're really not. I mean, my experience is that these are such evolved. I mean, we can't even fathom in our little minuscule human minds. Um, but the thing about it is that they, who's to say that they're not future selves of us?
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
That they're visiting, but I've had experiences where I've had out of body experiences, and I've seen future iterations of myself. But I
Hmm.
didn't know that at the time. But
Wow.
it was only until later with memory that, oh, I saw myself in the
Connection.
future, and it's who I am now and experiencing now. So who's to say that these entities that are coming and they're visiting that are not future iterations of who we are now. So really, we're just communicating with our future selves.
Mm, mm, mm.
Does that sort of make sense?
Absolutely. No, it totally makes sense. And if anyone out there, if you guys have questions or thoughts
Please.
about this, please chime in. I am, this is great. I feel like in the last couple of episodes, I've been able to really kind of get into my own brain and dig, into my own beliefs and try to figure out some of the things I believe. And so what I'm thinking is the common thread, not that there needs to be one, but the common thread is almost, again, just bound by human language, right? That because that's the only way I can really talk about it. But the common thread would be souls, right? Like the energy that is a being, that is a consciousness, is an awareness, and I guess, you brought up an interesting thing about your future self. And I was just watching something too that showed some aliens that was like, the idea of like, I'm from the future and I'm here, to find out some things, or I'm here to, you know, it's really it's fascinating. Again, my brain is like, I'm like, which way do I go with this conversation? Where can we go with this? So many things. Why don't we take it down a level? Why don't we talk about Jost van Dyke? Why don't we talk about what it is that you do currently? What do you do? What do you offer to people, or how do you interact with society? What is Jost van Dyke all about now?
Do I interact with society? I've done so many things. I mean, I'm an artist. I'm a musician, photographer, Pilates trainer, but I also do psychic and astrology work, which is kind of what the thing about it is I go through periods where, oh, this is what I'm going to do now, and then something else. It probably is like squirrel mentality. It's like whatever sort of pops up in my field. It's like if I have some sort of resonance in my heart, I'm definitely someone that follows my heart. If it makes a little buzz in my heart, then I'll follow it. So I've pursued a lot of different things, but currently, and this is something that I've been doing my whole life. I mean, I've always been intuitive and psychic and had prophetic dreams and been able to read people and stuff, but I never really hung out my shingle doing that until actually our mutual friend Grace Grella was one of the ones who really encouraged me to think about doing this professionally.
Awesome.
So thank you, Grace.
Thank you, Grace.
But, so I've been doing psychic astrology work since 2011.
No.
And so I offer psychic readings. I also offer astrology readings. So, but it's all, it's all blended with creativity. I mean, psychic phenomenon and creativity are so meshed together. So it only seemed like just a natural stepping stone, as it were, for me to go from being a creative into being sort of a psychic.
I love that connection 1,000,000%. I feel like there you go. There's the essence of what being is, right? Being is creation, right? We're here. That's what we're here to create. And it's like when you focus in on that, you get beautiful art, you get beautiful music, you get these wonderful creations, right? I mean, and there's people who don't focus in on, you get other stuff, you get the evil is a creation, right? It's just a different use of that energy. But I think again, I tend to appreciate the arts and creativity in that, even writing, videos, movies, all of this stuff, any sort of expression as humans, that we are creating something, which I love. I think that's awesome. I just want to catch up with Grace Grella because she's blown up the chat room. Earlier you were talking about you feel you haven't had an encounter for about 10 years, but you feel like if you asked, and she says, ask and you shall receive. And that's when she said that. And we were talking about aliens coming from the future, or these entities, being ourselves, being in the moment. Not sure where that one was coming in, but then when we acknowledged her for, putting you in this direction. She said she loves you. So I just wanted to catch up with her. And then we also
Thank
have
you.
Susan out there, who is in British Columbia, I think. First time I'm acknowledging Canada. Thank you for being here. I appreciate that.
Hi,
And
Susan.
calling you the soul embodiment. Absolutely. I see, that's what I love about this show, and I love talking to people because, you know, in the last bunch of years for me, I've really been able to see my reflection, right, in everybody I speak to. And so I feel like, you know, having these people on the show who are kind of exploring things that I don't personally explore allows me to, you know, have that in my field, you know, and get a better perspective of all of those things. And besides loving these conversations and using my brain for this kind of stuff. Awesome. So so you said so many things. You said you're a you create visual art, you're a painter, did you say?
No, photographer,
Oh,
like you.
photographer. Okay, like me, photographer.
Yeah.
So let's actually, let me see if I could bring up your website, and we'll take a quick look at your website, just to show everybody where they can find some more out about you. Here it is. It's scrolling across the bottom of the screen there. Jost van Dyke Astrology. And can we find any of your, is this mostly the intuitive stuff, or is there any of your art?
Yeah, there's no there except for a little thumbnail photos. There's my photography is not featured really.
I gotcha. I gotcha. So what do you like to photograph? What's your subject matter?
It depends. I mean, I'm not the usual photographer that always has a camera dangling from my neck. I have episodes where I'm going to go out and shoot.
Right, right.
And I'm most fascinated by sort of decisive moment type of photography where I just happen upon some sort of scenario or some sort of event, and I'm fortunate to be there, and I, you know, take a photo.
Gotcha.
Um, but I'm also now I'm getting more into micro photography
Oh,
and working
nice.
with crystals and kind of getting into
Ooh,
the inner realms of crystalline technology, as it
I
were.
like that. Oh, I like that
So
a
that's
lot.
something that I'm sort of have been playing around with for several years. I'm still developing. Um, so again, this is photography is something that I sort of have put down for right now, even though I've always got my iPhone camera and I can always, you know, sort of snap.
Sure.
Um, but right now, I'm just really kind of focusing my energy on my astrology work.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So here's an interesting question. And this is kind of interesting because it goes back to the discussion we were having before the show about Hawaii. And that is, when I was trying to do some research about you, obviously I knew your website and looked at your research, but I a lot of stuff was coming up about Jost van Dyke, the island. So is that connected to
Oh,
where
there's a
you?
story there.
So let's hear the story. And by the way, I'm surprised I didn't think of it when we were talking earlier, because like that is exactly what I'm talking about. Like that's where I would love to live, like that kind of, you know, pristine beauty, pure, just, you know. But let's hear the story about Jost van Dyke, because for people who may or may not know, Jost van Dyke is actually this island, and tell us where that is and tell us the story.
It's part of the British Virgin Islands. Its more famous neighbor is Tortola. So Tortola is right. I don't forgot what the name of the bay is. I've never been to the island.
Okay.
And
But
how
yeah, more
this
people
is
have
when
heard
I
of
was.
Tortola. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
More, but yeah, I think more people have heard of Tortola.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah. Oh,
actually, Jost van Dyke is becoming more and more popular.
wow. Oh,
Um,
And I have Jeff Regan out there saying I went there. It was awesome. Wow.
oh,
How
great!
amazing is that to have somebody here in the audience? Jeff Regan, welcome, who actually
Yay!
went to Jost van Dyke. That's awesome.
Awesome.
So go ahead.
Um,
So
so this is when I was living in New York, and I had a friend who every summer he and his friends would rent a sailboat and sail off, I guess, from Miami and sail to Jost van Dyke and Tortola and sail all around. And this must have been back in like 1985, 85, 86. My natal name is Joseph Dykes, and I never was a Joe. I never was a Joseph. And this was back when I was concertizing and doing a lot of work in the classical music world in New York. And I just wasn't happy with my name. I wanted to change my name. So my friend Michael was on the island of Jost van Dyke and was walking along the beach. And he said, I literally was just walking along and I started thinking, Joseph Dykes, Jost van Dyke, Joseph Dyke, Jost van Dyke.
Wow.
And then he had, kind of that aha moment. And it just so happens when he returned, he and his wife threw me a surprise birthday party in the Hamptons. And he brought out this cake, this big birthday cake that said, "Happy birthday, Jost van Dyke." And I was like, well, who else in the room has birthday on April 1st? But then he said, well, he told me the story, the anecdote, and the rest is history. It just resonated. It's like, that's it. So I also was a music editor for a music publisher for a while. So that Monday morning, I walked into the office and said, okay, my name, I'd like to now be addressed as Jost van Dyke. And literally there was no question. Everybody was like, oh my God, that's your name. That's
okay.
it.
Yeah. That's
So
amazing.
the rest is history, and that's,
and so it shall be, right? That's amazing.
and so it shall be. Yes.
That's amazing. And just in case anyone was wondering, this was what I saw when I was looking up Jost van Dyke. I was just like drooling at the beauty of this island. and just you know what, I love the fact that I was looking at it and it was kind of like your vibration. I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like, how cool would it be to like, words are so powerful. And I've never been inspired to do something like that, but I feel like that story is exactly how it would happen. It's just like it happens. You know what I mean? Like, there's something that happens and all of a sudden that's my name, and you become that. Susan is saying I was in Tortola in 76. Wow. And I believe I went to that island. Coincidence? Yes, she was in Jost van Dyke. Awesome. Very, very cool. I love that, Jost. Awesome.
Well, doesn't that bring us back to the whole idea of consciousness? How, these things, where do these things come from? It's like, so is consciousness a cloud? Like a non-localized cloud that's just, that we tap into, and because of fields of energy that, and through human evolution, I guess I love Rupert Sheldrake's morphogenetic ideology, where there are these fields of energy, and that's where matter comes up, or that's where form takes shape. I mean, it's energy first, those morphogenetic fields, and then then the matter takes that shape of that energy field.
Right.
So if you have this non-localized cloud out there, could it be that this streams of energy developed the human brain, this thing that weighs 3 pounds that feels like tofu? I mean, but it developed so that it becomes a transmitter, or a receiver, I should say.
Right. That's what yeah.
So there's
so listen, that's a whole fascinating thing, that it's these physical bodies are actually just like tapping into this stream that's out there, and having that's the whole idea that a lot of spiritual people talk about, that you are source having an experience of itself, right? And that's why I think we all believe that, because it just makes so much sense. You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, I get that, and it just resonates. It's like I feel like there's some spiritual philosophies that, as humans, like I said, we're kind of limited on our language abilities to describe, so it just becomes more of an intuitive thing. It becomes a feeling, and that's where I think the whole field of intuition, intuitives, that's where they're at. They're in that space, of kind of being able to tap into those energies. So again, there's I actually didn't ask you this. Did you do any sort of channeling at all, like any trans channeling, or not your thing?
Um, Grace is going to chime in, so I got to be. 'Cause yes, I do. I mean,
Okay,
I don't I don't have the branding or the moniker,
gotcha. It's not something you're
transmitting
doing.
it.
Right.
But yes, I think the work that I do, and certainly when I was when I was a performing pianist, it was channeling. I mean, as
Right.
soon as I sat down the piano
I
bench and
love,
started
yeah, I
playing,
love that you said that. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was, I mean, I no longer, there were times where I would be performing and I'd be sitting in the audience seeing myself do this. So
Wow.
it was kind of like a channeling kind of thing. And,
1,000,000%. Yeah.
and I'm also, I do a lot of writing. And so I
Okay.
feel like it's sort of automatic writing, which is sort
Mhm.
of like a channeling kind of.
Absolutely. Yeah. No,
But as far
absolutely.
as, channeling some sort of non-localized entity like Seth or Bashar, no. Well,
Right.
not
Okay. And
yet.
well, not yet. No, that's great. And Susan is saying you channel 24/7, and Grace is saying yes, he does. Yeah. No. And I love where you went with that, because you could have been like, oh, do you mean, do I like become one of the Galactic Council and give messages? No, I don't. But channeling, I mean, I made that realization too. I used to play in bands, and I was like, wow, when I was 20 years old in the basement playing with my friends, I was channeling, like
yeah,
those moments where we were making music, three separate souls in one place doing something that became one like big dance. Like that was channeling. And I think that people need to understand that, like there's definitely a lot of stigma around channeling when it comes to the Galactic Council, or people who Bashar, even Bashar, you know what I mean? I think there's a lot of people who are just like, what, that guy's a lunatic. But when you can step back and you can appreciate what's going on there and resonate with it, I think it just becomes something different than something. And that goes back to what you were talking about, just levels of consciousness, right? Being able to receive that or not being able to receive that. What I think is cool, and at least for me, that's been really cool, is as I feel like I am achieving higher levels, and I don't even want to call them higher levels. I love what you said about the gradient, like it's a gradient, right? As I achieve other experiences and other perceptions, I find it easier to have compassion for people who haven't. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, oh my God, this person, they don't know, they're not ascended. There's no judgment. As you go higher and higher, you judge less and less, right? Which is great. I think you become closer and closer to that unconditional love, as you ascend through these different gradients. I'm going to call them gradients instead of levels of consciousness. I love that, man. Gradient. That's such a great description of it. Oh, Hat Powser's out there. What's up, Hat? Hi, almost missed it. Super weird day. Direct communication. My first name appeared in the digital readout on my car radio after I asked this morning for an obvious sign. Obvious enough. Sounds pretty obvious to me. Awesome. I love again. It's like you can create these connections as you're more and more aware of them. You can start to create them, and you're like, oh, I want a sign. It's like almost like, well, you manifest that. You know what I mean? It's like you're putting yourself right in that spot to have that validation that you're looking for.
well, you
And
connect to a field. It's a field of energy, and you either connect or you don't.
right.
And there are those that are just more wired to receive that, just like with any sort of apparatus. So they're wired, to do a particular thing. um, there are those that, they're just wired for that. And then there are those that are not wired for that and they don't want to have anything to do with that. So it does come to how open you are to receive.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, fortunately, like I said, I feel like, once you start on that path and you are open to it, then that opens to more and more people, like connections like you and me talking right now, and people connecting in your life, like Grace Grella's in my life. She's so amazing. So many amazing things and connections have happened since we've kind of just said, you know what, I think I resonate with you. And we're just like, yeah, we do. We
That's
resonate.
what she does.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, again, not to go back to kind of conspiracy theories, but I think the conditioning is to not resonate, right? They're trying to get us to not connect to each other as much, because the more that we do connect, the more we realize what we are as an energy. I don't even want to say as a race of beings. What we are as an energy, what we are as a collective consciousness. Um, and I saw Grace Grella was saying compassionate consciousness out there. Awesome.
Well, isn't it interesting how, I mean, certainly, well, over the past 10 or 15 years, the outer planets, and I'm talking about Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, they're sort of, Dane Rudger, was very famous and influential astrologer, called those three planets the ambassadors of the galaxy. So what those three planets have been doing over the past 10 or 15 years really has been about raising people's consciousness. And so when you think about, as far as the collective and where people were, 10 or 15 years ago, as opposed to where they are now, there's been a critical mass of enlightenment that's been happening.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
I think it's really interesting that as people are awakening and they're being able to see through all the shadows and all this kind of stuff that's been going on, they're coming in and they're trying to control, and they're trying to control through artificial means. So the whole idea with artificial intelligence, I just think the timing is really interesting, because it's another element of control, trying to keep people's consciousness disempowered, and to not to live in fear, and to not keep expanding. Now again, that comes back to one is either wired or not. Now the ones that are really wired, and I think we are, and the listening audience certainly are, so I'm preaching to the choir, but we're wanting to, it's like, bring it on. We more and more and more. And so, in popular culture, the whole idea of quantum jumping into the fifth dimension, that's all well and good, but I mean, we've got the fourth dimension in between, and the fourth dimension is where myths and beliefs and ideology, and archetypes, that's that field. So we've got to burst through the fourth dimension to get to 5D. So we still have a lot of work ahead of us as far as the collective is concerned.
I agree, and I also very interesting in what you're saying, because I never really thought about that. Well, like, why do people always talk about going right to the 5D and not talking about the 4D? And I did read Lori Ladd. I had her on the show. She wrote a book called The Divine Design, and she did talk about that briefly, about how the fourth dimension was kind of this nefarious, almost like level, right? It was just like this kind of level of where, people trying to control, like you said, and like just this low vibration, I guess, is
It's like a
happening.
membrane, or it's like, it's like a bell jar. It's like, we're sort of like under this bell jar, and we've got to, well, the thing about it is that, with expanding consciousness that's happening worldwide, we're all linking together and creating our own energy field. And that energy field, well, I think it's already happening, that we're shattering that bell jar.
Yeah.
People's consciousness is becoming so expanded that we're breaking out of calcified reality constructs. that we've all lived within containers. Those are reality containers that we've been living within for millennia. And so this is a really incredible moment to be alive, because we're all well, not everybody, but those of us who are participating, we're shattering. We're shattering that bell jar. We're bursting through that membrane. That's the fourth dimension.
And it's interesting, and this goes back to the conversation that you and I were having before about AI, and I love the fact that you went into that, because I'm like thinking, oh, we should talk about AI, and all of a sudden you're there. But I guess the whole idea of how do I put this? AI is one of these things that has come. It's almost like a tool that is being used for control, but there's also this other aspect of it that AI can be beneficial to us if we use it right. So it's human nature that's going to be the key of the way that AI plays out, right? Is which part of human nature is going to actually dominate how AI is used, and if it's used for good and for the proliferation of the human species, then infinite possibilities are there. But there's also the possibility that there's malevolent hands on it, and it's used to wipe us out, which it would be really good at doing either one of those things. It would really wipe us out really well, or it really bring us to this next amazing level. Susan is acknowledging Lori is great. Yeah, she was amazing to talk to. That was a real mind-opening conversation as well. And Jost, this is wonderful, man. I don't know if you're having a good time, but I love talking about this stuff and just provoking other people to think about it, and even provoking myself to have new perspectives, because a lot of the times you're just kind of sitting there like, what's going on? I have no idea. I have no control. But as you start to think about it, you're able to control your own response to it, right? And that's all we can do anyway, is control our own response to the situation. So awesome. Yeah, I feel like when it comes to AI, there is certainly like I said, different contingencies. So there's contingencies of people who are like, oh, this makes it easy, I don't have to think now. You were talking about how you don't even give power to Alexa or Siri when you want to know something. You feel closer to it when you do it yourself, when you go look something up. And that was, I loved that you said that. That was just so brilliant, because I mean, I'm guilty of that, but I certainly can understand, wow, maybe I won't depend on Siri and Alexa so much. I like, again, I feel like there's a harmony. I feel like there's a place that we can coexist with AI, and all intentions are positive on both sides. And I guess we'll see soon, right, what happens with that, because every day there are more and more advances, and I'm sure you guys see it in your software and in your phone and everywhere you look. Probably soon in restaurants and shopping centers, you'll see it if you haven't already, I guess. But oh, Yost, this is so good. So where are you at now, and what do you got coming up? Anything that you want to promote? Anything? I mean, you're focusing on your intuitive stuff. You just finally were happy with your website and released it to the public, and I guess you're just gonna go on that journey and help people out with intuitive and astrology applications.
My philosophy is, I mean, because for so many years I was a go-getter, make it happen, make it happen. But at this ripe age, my philosophy is just to be present and available. So, you know, whatever, I mean, I'm just open and available to, what sort of falls on my path.
Right. You know what? And that really is kind of the spiritual philosophy. It's like whatever's supposed to happen will happen, right? It's like you're gonna you're going to run into someone who's going to want to interview on your show, and you'll go do it. And here we are in this moment right now, and we're making it happen. So that's awesome. I love it. Grace is reminding me, and I totally forgot that me and Janice both scheduled you for the same week. You are going to be appearing on Janice's show, The Quiet
I
Healer,
am.
Unique Piece, which is also a wonderful, wonderful show that, like, I'm just so grateful for my life. And Janice is my girlfriend, and she saw me doing the live stream of consciousness, just kind of, thought it was cool and watched me doing it. And she's a Reiki master, and she's been trying to grow her Reiki business. And she's very, very introverted, hence the quiet healer, right? She's not the kind of person who will go out and introduce herself to people and stuff. And you kind of need to do that when you want to grow a business like a Reiki business. And she just, she didn't even ask me to help her. She just one day was like, I'm doing a show called Unique Piece, and this is what it's about. And she just started, and man, she was so good at it. And it's just such a wonderful show to watch. And she's had some amazing guests on. So Sunday she'll have another amazing guest, and you'll have another opportunity to be interviewed and get your word out there. Very exciting. Awesome. I feel like it's kind of late to jump into something new, because there's so many things I want to talk to you. I would love to have you back if you're willing to come back and just have some more conversations. We can pick a topic and even talk about it. But before I let you go, is there any general words of advice or love or gratitude that you'd like to express to anyone listening?
Well, thank you to you, Michael, and thank you, Grace, for connecting the two of us. Gosh, I mean, that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
A lot's happening. A lot is being revealed right now, and there's also a lot of denial. And the thing about it is that we don't have enough time now, but I mean, we can look at the astrological influences that are creating this. But what I would like to leave people with is, be open to all kinds of possibilities. Be open to be aware of your own cognitive dissonance, where, certain things are coming into your cognitive field. And just because you don't know anything about it, you shut it down or you try to censor it, which is happening a lot. That a lot of that is coming through ignorance. Oh, and a lot of it is coming through is that, oh my God, you're lifting up the veil and we don't want you to do that. So be aware of that, and, just be open to receive. And I can't tell you enough how the philosophy of just being present and available, the magic and the enchantment that can happen in your life. Now, I'm not saying that everything becomes, unicorn laden fields with fairy dust and stuff like that. No, but there is something to be said by just, trusting that it's already done. You're already fulfilled.
Right.
All those things that that you feel like you have to have, if you come from an attitude that they're already here, they're already there. It's just your perception is what's lagging behind.
Right.
So, I just wanted to offer that encouragement to, just to be open and to receive, and again, check your cognitive dissonance, because that's kind of what, the term looshing, which, I mean, the lower frequency entities that feed off that low energy, cognitive dissonance is very appetizing. So just a little bit of a caveat and a little bit of a warning to be kind of aware of that. We all have to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about it here too sometimes, a little bit related to what you're saying. I love what you said, is just show up, right? So in other words, I know who I am. I know what I have to offer. I know how I treat people. A lot of times, if I just show up as me, that's like you said, that's when magic things happen. That's when everything aligns. And if I don't show up, it doesn't happen. So you got to show up, and I think that's kind of related to what you're saying. Show up in your own thoughts and your own beliefs. Don't let the world around you decide what's real. You know what I mean? You got to show up and decide what's real. And it's tough these days, for sure. But luckily, we have things like the live stream of consciousness and guests like Jost van Dyke to help us along the way. and I've always said this is my happy place. I every Thursday night I'm here, and I'm excited to be here and have another great conversation. So thank you so much for being here. Looking forward to speaking with you again.
Well, you're a wonderful host.
Oh, thank you so
Really
much.
wonderful. So thank you so much. I appreciate
Thank you so much. And Susan's saying attitude with gratitude. Grace Grella always cheering me on. Awesome show. I'm going to say goodbye to you for now. I'll put you in the green room, and I'm going to sign off to my audience, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes. Thanks for being here. Oh, Jost van Dyke, folks. What did you think? Amazing, right? It's so great. I'm so happy to have the validation each week of the different human beings that are around that I haven't had the chance to meet, because a lot of the human beings I meet, they don't encourage me as much as the ones that I invite on the show. They encourage me that there's a lot of hope for the future. There's a lot of love in the world. There's a lot of connection between people. I hope you guys connected, and please comment in the comments, all of that stuff that helps the show grow. It's just you guys engaging with me. So if you can, tell a friend. If you can subscribe, I ring a bell right here, like a real actual bell. I'll ring it for you and say your name out loud. But again, that's what it's all about. Thank you for being here. A couple of comments I see. I think it's not a question of if it will be used for bad, as it for sure will be. Getting into another topic, Tim. I'm going to agree with you. The question is, which side will utilize it better to ultimately decide if it will betterment for society or not. That's a great way to state that without getting into a deep conversation about it. But yes, you're absolutely right. It's not a question, because there's duality here in the 3D that we live in, right? There's good and evil. So it surely will be used for that, but hopefully good. And I'm not even going to say hopefully, because I do know that evil is just a small part of good. Evil wouldn't exist without good. So anyway, I'm not going to get into that. Tim, thanks so much. Great episode. Hat, thank you so much. Helen, thank you so much for being here. You guys are amazing. I love you guys so much. Next week, let me take a quick look. I think I have David Schock, who is he does some really great channeling. He actually channels Christ. He talks about the Christ consciousness. Very, very interesting fella who was in the Akashic Records class that I took and I talked about here a little bit. So that's coming up next week. And then Thanksgiving, we're going to take a little break. After that, I got the real Brimstone, who is an ex-wrestler, amazing performer. There's some cool things happening here on the live stream of consciousness. I'm grateful for it. I will see you guys next week. Peace out.